So it's like sometimes, when I look at the sneaker, I say, who is this for? They have to see. They're all about show and prove. So all I want to do in this life is just inspire women. And I have like a whole newfound respect for how hard it is to change some corporate culture and to really put women at the forefront. But the more we have women that are key decision makers, the more we will get to see that change in this lifetime, which I'm hella excited about. I'm really excited to see what, like, maybe in 10 years, what that generation is gonna see on their feet. And right now I'm just I'm in a place of like listening to different stories about sneakers that have come out in cycles again and again. And it's like there's whole new stories. And I'm like, that's not the story about that sneaker. Like, I remember when that shit first came out. Like, that sneaker wasn't even lit like that. Like, get out of here. So it's like the brands get to tell whole new stories and introduce it to a new generation. I think everything they want is to be fresh and new. I think they want to introduce everything as fresh and new. And sometimes we lose a little piece of our history in some of that and just wanting to be so fresh and new. And there's a lot of young designers, right? So you got design teams, marketing teams, then you have product teams. So it's like everyone connects an idea. So it's like gossip. You gossip here and the story changes all the way by the end. So it's like the sneaker designs, and then by the time you get to the end, it's got a whole new story to it that may not have been like the original idea of the designer or the original thought of the designer or the original marketing, which is like the history and things like that. It just translates into something different. So the question I always ask is, who is the sneaker for? So when I look at a sneaker, I'm like, who's this sneaker for? I kind of could look at the design and the marketing and just say, that's for the young collectors, or that's for guys. That's for the guys that collect heavy. Like, they're gonna love that sneaker just because maybe it has some materials or something on it that I know, like, some of these guys go crazy for. Like when they get a good leather, or they get like Stingray on a sneaker, they go crazy. Or they get some kind of hardware that's really like luxurious. They love that. So it's like sometimes, when I look at the sneaker, I say, who is this for? For women, I could see sometimes they add zippers and buckles, and it's just like, no, but that's what we get. Or a lot of pink, or some of these like minty colors. We're getting a lot of mints these days. So it's like, all these different brands, they kind of give us a little something different. But I know what I like. Like in 2023, I expect a really nice box. I expect a dust bag or a travel bag because I take my sneakers everywhere. I expect good hardware. I want to see that I have aglets and lace plates and things that make the sneakers happy and exciting. I like good material. So I like good leathers, satins, canvases that are really nice. I like mixed materials. So I think now it's like, that's what I expect to see. So to see something bland sometimes, it's like, miss, you missed me with this. So all I want to do in this life is just inspire women. It's just like, we were never empowered to love sports and love sneakers. That's always been like, you're a tomboy, or you're a sneakerhead. When I was a kid and they used to call me a sneakerhead, I used to get pissed off. That was a curse word. That was a bad word. So to be like, oh, you're a sneakerhead, it means that I don't know nothing but sneakers. Like, I'm just the airhead who just likes sneakers. It's something like in the hood, they call you a chicken head. It's like you're a whore, you're outside. So it's like at the time you're a crackhead, you do crack. That's all you do is crack. So sneakerhead was, it derived from that at the time. So when I was young, they used to be like, oh, don't ask her nothing, she's just a sneakerhead. And I used to be like, whatever. And through the years, I had to learn to accept that word. I had to learn that the context and the era changed. I was so against that word. I'm sure there's interviews of me where I'm like, I'm not a sneakerhead, where you hear me saying that, because it took so long and it took a while for me to embrace that. And I think it was the changing point for that word for me was I did I worked with eBay on a campaign, and the premise of it was female sneakerhead, like changing the landscape or something. And I remember being in the call, and I'm really like, hey, why do we call this sneakerhead? You know, why are we here? And I remember just like listening to the breakdown of where we are in this era with that word, and how many of the young women identify themselves as that. So it's like if you look at the hashtag like female sneakerhead, how many hashtags are there? Young women identify themselves as that because to them it means something different. It's a word of empowerment. It's a word that's like, because now they think only guys could be sneakerheads. So the word female sneakerhead means something very important to them. So if I did not change my thinking and join them, then I couldn't lead in that space. And I couldn't lead to those young women who need a leader, and they need to hear their OGs speak. Because if not, then in any culture, if you don't have your elders speaking and giving wisdom, then you don't have a freaking culture. So, and I tell this all the time, you can't kill your OGs, you know, by pushing them to the side, because then who's gonna lead in the space and give the wisdom and the guidance and speak the truths of the culture. So it's like where they're telling new stories about sneakers, you know, you got an OG that's like, wrong story, that's not it. That sneaker was never lit. Like right now they got a new word for Air Force Ones. I'm blanking on it, but we call them Uptowns. We call them Air Force Ones. I'm forgetting the word. They just texted to me the other day and I forgot. It'll come to me. But I'm like, what the hell is that? And they're like, it's an Air Force One. And I'm like, absolutely not. I will not be calling it that. What's wrong with you kids? I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, I want to know now.
Wait, I gotta get the, it's Air Force Ones, what they call it. Yeah, I'm gonna, G Nikes. They call it G Nikes.
Why?
A G Nike is an Air Force One. So I was told the other day, those are cool, but you wear a lot of G Nikes. I said, whoa, what's a G Nike? I said, I don't wear a lot of anything, first of all, because I change so much. Like every day I'm in a new mood. So, and I'm like, what's a G? I already knew that it was something. It's a new word for something. I was so enamored by it. I'm like, what's a G Nike? And they're like, Air Force One. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like you call a Air Force One a G Nike? And so my little intern, she was showing me all the songs where it references G Nike. She was showing me where they hashtagged G Nike, and just how this generation is using the word G Nike as Air Force One. And I was like, absolutely not. It is an AF1, Air Force One, Uptown. And she's like, why they call it Uptowns for? They're low. I'm like, it's not about the design of the sneaker. It's where the sneaker was predominantly worn. So it was pretty funny, but definitely the landscape is changing. I think the define where culture lives is first important for me. So it's like we have online culture, which is like how we interact daily, how we good morning each other, how we introduce, how we show up to the world online. That's one place where culture lives. But there's a real life culture that most people online have no idea that sneaker culture exists in the real world too. You know, it's the group of women you meet up with on the block and you guys get ready to go to brunch and you're all in sneakers and talk about sneakers. It's the group of women you meet up to go cop a pair of sneakers with. You know, it's the events and parties and the places that you frequent with people who love sneakers. So there's a real life sneaker culture versus one that exists online. And I think like they are not the same, and they're not the same people, and they're not the same culture. So I always first like to identify like what I see. I see something in the real world and I see something that exists online only. And I see that those two places don't exist. How do I feel about it? I feel like we're in a weird place with sneaker culture, I think, because every few years it changes. And I feel like this year is a big year for change. I feel like, you know, last year everything was all women, 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 women. Now everything is being executed for women. So it changes how we move forward. But I think this generation, not Gen Z. What's after Gen Z? I think they're Gen Ultra or some name like that. But I think that they have a natural want to know more than I think Gen Z did about like sneakers and history. So I feel like this generation is changing a little bit the way things are. Like I'm a millennial, so things were different for me than the generation that we see coming up after, where history was not important for them. But I see this next generation come up, they want to know all the things. They're very curious. But at the end of the day, they listen to and they take advice and wisdom and history if you are still knee deep in the game. So some people who collect sneakers, they stopped collecting hype and they stopped collecting sneakers a long time ago. Because you get older, shit happens in life. Like you have families and kids and your focus becomes different. I get all of that. I think even for me and families and when I have children, still gonna be in my sneakers because it was something that's part of my family. But a lot of people don't see it like that. So they just kind of start sliding off to the side. So then the elders start like leaving the culture or moving away from the culture. And these kids literally only listen to sneakers. Sneakers speak to them. So if they see you outside, rocking the hottest shit and you're rocking the rare shit and you everywhere and you're lit, that's when they listen. And they're like, oh, you know what? She's been doing this for a long time. Look at her sneaker game. Like, look how many. Like, look what she has. So I think that's where they start to listen. They have to see. They're all about show and prove. Japanese culture. So, like, there's so many things. Tabby toes.